Hi everyone, and welcome back to Effective Communications. Today I'm going to talk about a pretty tough subject for some people, and that's why good intentions fail in cross-language or cross-cultural communications and how to fix that. Let me ask you something. Have you ever said something and it sounded perfectly normal to you, but to the other person they took it the wrong way, and suddenly the whole conversation goes sideways? Now imagine that happening when your native language is different from the person you're speaking to. Today I want to talk about why communications breaks down between native and non-native speakers, and that's not English inclusive. It happens between any kind of languages or cultural differences. English just happens to be the one I'm most familiar with, but I do know how to solve the problem. And I know how to make sure that words don't accidentally create conflict when the goal is clarity. Now, why is it harder than most of us think, or a lot of people think, that there's a communication issue when you're talking to somebody? Maybe they speak the same language as you, but it's not their native language. When you speak your native language, you're not communicating words only. You're communicating tone, culture, assumptions, and emotional shortcuts. A lot of emotional shortcuts in English. But when someone is speaking in their second language, they're translating it in their head, choosing words carefully, word for word, just like an online translator would do, and sometimes missing the emotional meaning behind what you say. They're missing it completely. So something that feels direct and efficient to you, it can feel harsh, cold, or dismissive to somebody else, especially if they don't speak your native language. And the problem is, neither person thinks that they're doing something wrong. Here's where things really go wrong in today's society. We'll talk about verbal versus text. And everybody's texting nowadays, writing emails, texting. Now let's make this harder, because texting and email is very difficult to convey when you're talking to somebody who's not their native language. When you remove facial expressions, tone and timing, the other person fills in those emotional blanks themselves. And guess what they usually fill it with? Stress, doubt, or even worst case assumptions. A short message like, if I were to say, we need to talk. Well, to me that might mean, let's catch up later. Somebody else, it might feel like they did something wrong. They might get very defensive with that, especially if it's written in text. When a language is already a barrier, written communications multiply the misunderstandings. That's why so many conflicts today don't start with what's said, they start with how it's read. And that's a big issue. Now, there's 3 ways you can help clear up the communication difficulties between language and culture. First thing is to slow down your conclusions. In other words, if someone reacts emotionally to something you said, don't assume they're being dramatic or difficult. Try assuming that the message didn't land the way you intended it to. That shift alone prevents a lot of unnecessary escalations. The second thing you should try and do is use intent statements. I say intent because one of the simplest tools you can do is just, if there's a possibility of a miscommunication, just say, what I'm trying to say is very direct. It usually gets the point across, and it's easy to understand. Or you can say, my intention here is not to criticize, it's to understand. When people don't share language or culture, they need help separating the message from the meaning. Intent statements usually create safety for them and yourself. The third thing I want to talk about is texting over sensitive topics. When you communicate on something that's a very important matter, like relationship, money, conflict expectations, don't handle those through texting. When you're talking about something that personal and that relationally important, even if it's among business associates, the tone matters, the pauses matter, clarifications matter, and none of that exists in texting or emails. 5 minutes of real conversation can fix what 30 minutes or 30 messages can destroy very quickly. I have personal experience in this particular subject. I've learned this personally in my own life. When you care about someone who doesn't speak your native language, you learn very quickly that being right doesn't matter as much as being understood. And that's just that's just with relationships. Relationships aren't just about personal relationships, they're about business and leadership and teamwork. Communication isn't about how clear your words are, it's about how safe the other person feels about receiving them, how it affects them. If you work with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, or different first languages, your greatest communication skill isn't vocabulary, it's patience. Slow down, clarify your intent, and choose connection over speed, because being understood always beats being efficient. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do more details or more videos in this regard. I have a lot of experience with it. Also, subscribe and click the notification bell if you don't want to miss any of my upcoming videos. And you could share this with somebody who you think might be able to help, either give me some input or who might actually find some use in it. Thank you for stopping by.